Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on how to play Position 3. Offlane. Unsurprisingly, offlane refers to the offlane farming role of any given Dota 2 match. This position will get the least farm of any given core, but they also have some of the most important responsibilities in the entire game, and those responsibilities can vary quite a bit depending on which offlaner hero you've chosen. They can be roughly divided into three different types: your standard blink initiators, your zoo heroes, and your one-on-one assassins. We'll be getting into examples of all three of the different types later on, but for now, just know that when most people think of offlaner, they're thinking of a melee strength hero with an AoE stun of some sort that has a way of tanking a lot of damage. These heroes function as the sacrificial playmakers for their team, using what little farm they have to their utmost advantage in order to catch the team's attention and start fights off on a good note. Both the Blink Initiators and 1v1 Assassins have the main goal of initiating teamfights by blinking in and using some kind of combination of spells in order to attract the enemy's attention. Ideally, they're able to pick off a key component of the enemy's teamfight in the process, but not always, and that's when the tanking component really comes into play. But not every Position 3 starts the game with the goal of jumping into 5 heroes and dying a warrior's death. Instead, some Position 3s have the explicit goal of exploiting a weakness in the opponent's draft. For example, many zoo heroes aim to exploit the enemy's lack of AoE clear or inability to defend their early towers by creating a major tempo advantage using multiple units. Assassin-type offlaners can also take advantage of teams that are highly reliant on one individual hero as a win condition, hampering their mid-game and then dealing with them in the late game as well. This is the position that will test the enemy team's ability to deal with extreme tank, multiple units, deathball potential, sustained CC, teamfighting, and other potential shortfalls. Put simply, in the draft, you're going to have to look for the boxes that they haven't ticked, and then pick your hero according to that. Though let's be real, more often than not, you're going to be blind picking into the second phase, right into a juggernaut. Now we'll be talking about the mentality of being a Position 3 player soon, but for now, take a look in the top right, and pick one of these types of avatars to display on your Steam profile. Your first option is one of the default profile pictures from the Xbox 360, because let's be real, Position 3 players are freaking boomers. Your second option is an image that is ripped straight out of Dota itself. Usually an ability from a designated offlaner works best, but you can also just pick a hero portrait and use that instead. For that purpose, Pudge is the most common option. To unlock the Sisyphus profile picture, you have to be a zoo picker by default, and there aren't really any alternatives, but I guess if you're Chinese, you can go with Wugong chopping the tree. They actually have the exact same story as us, except he's on the moon for some reason. Now in my Position 1 video, I noted that carry is the second most mechanically difficult position to play, but depending on which kind of offlaners you like to pick, that might not be true. Heroes like Tidehunter and Underlord only require about 80 to 85 IQ points to pilot effectively, but once you get into picks like Enigma and Brewmaster, you're going to need to really activate your almonds to make the most of these heroes. Many of these heroes have complicated abilities and require in-depth micro in order to bring out the best of them, so if you're just signing up in order to put circles on the ground, tough shit buddy, you're going to have to set control groups. This massive spread of mechanical difficulty is almost entirely unique to the offlane, but I ultimately see it as a huge benefit to playing the role. You can become a very accomplished offlane player by just picking simple heroes that want to blink in and stun. But if you ever want to expand your horizons, you have a ton of different options that take advantage of different skills that you can develop over time. Our example heroes later will be primarily focused on those easier heroes, but don't worry, we'll have a little bit of spice for you there too. Another fun part of playing as offlane is doing absolute freak shit to the enemy creep wave, more so than any other core position on the map. Wave cutting, or proxying as it's referred to by certain undesirables, is the process of circumventing the usual creep equilibrium by going behind the enemy tier 1 tower and aggroing the wave yourself. From there, you can either farm it on its own or drag it to a jungle camp and take full advantage of your built-in clear. Many offlaners have methods of clearing jungle camps built into their kit, which will definitely come in handy when you blind pick into Witch Doctor Ursa. But one of the best parts of wave cutting is that it's also going to put a large amount of much needed distance between you and your government assigned Position 4. On paper, a lot of offlane matchups are very straightforward, you either win or you lose, but a Position 4 has the ability to flip that in either direction. The majority of soft supports have some way of harassing the carry, even if that just means standing just out of aggro range and right-clicking them over and over again. But while he's harassing the Position 1, you're going to have to deal with the Pos 5, and if your Pos 4 is handling the enemy support, then you have to box out the carry. You'll have to develop a Punnett square in your head to determine which situations are beneficial to your team, and the answers might be more complicated than you're willing to admit. For example, it may appear sometimes like your Position 4 just took a fat hit of ketamine and is attempting to switch sides, but in reality, they're grabbing the creep wave to bring it between your towers to farm safely. Other times, it may seem like he's intentionally feeding, but if you notice that the creep wave is always right in front of your tower whenever he's respawning, then he's probably doing something correct and on purpose. Learning to read the strange signals given off by position 4 players is one of the weirder parts of playing offlane, but don't worry, you'll eventually learn to speak stoner. And finally, one of the most important skills to learn as an offlaner is when to accept your own death. It sounds morbid, but once you get into the late game and numbers really ratchet up, it is almost impossible to blink into the middle of a teamfight and walk out alive. Lesser men will realize that they can further preserve their sentience by not blinking into that fight. But you're an offlaner player. You are not a lesser man. For you, the mission comes first, and your goal will not be to survive the teamfight at all, but to instead do as much damage and tanking as you possibly can on the way out. You need to be a man, and sometimes at war, men die. When it comes time to pick between preserving your own life or saving those of your carry and supports, you shouldn't even have to hesitate. There was an old saying passed among samurai that when one enters battle, they are already dead, and they must instead earn their life back by committing valorous deeds. But unlike feudal Japan, Dota 2 has a respawn system, so don't worry, you'll win it back by default. Real quick, if you'd like to help support the channel, I have a Patreon linked in the description. There won't be any stupidly long videos this week, but I recently uploaded a tier list on there that should help you get through a couple of lunches. And if you're already subscribed as a patron, thank you very much for your continued support. Now, offlane players are usually stereotyped as uncultured morons with smooth brains who can't tell the difference between a vintage Riesling and a new age Gewürztraminer. But believe it or not, there are actually a lot of different mental skills that a good offlaner has to learn in order to succeed at their role. One of those is a sense of patience, being able to look past the present situation and realize that tomorrow could be a brighter day. You're going to be spending the bulk of your lane super far away from your tower, meaning that if you get in a disadvantageous position, the enemy safe lane will have a very long time to track you down and kill you. When this happens, you need to be able to keep your head down and plug away towards a blink dagger, even if you're in a 1v3 and getting farmed by the carry like corn and nobody is doing anything about it. As mentioned earlier, many offlaners have ways of coming back into the game by farming jungle, things like Tidehunter's Anchor Smash or Bristleback's Bristleback. Those tools exist specifically for situations like that, where you're going to have to spend some time in the triangle before you're able to meaningfully contribute to a team fight. In the same way, playing against a nightmarish safe lane combo like Sniper and Venomancer can make you want to tear your hair out and abandon. But even in strong duo range lanes, you will more than likely get an opportunity to kill the carry and assert your dominance, even if it's only temporary. Developing a sense of patience and waiting for the right opportunity to strike is the bedrock of proper position 3 play, and it's something that scales all the way from the lane up into the late game. Now earlier I talked about the many situations where you're going to be expected to blink into 5 heroes and eat shit, but oftentimes there is a way to get out with 50 HP and a dream. Your ability to get away with this sort of thing is highly dependent on how well you know your limits, and that means you're going to have to test them. You're going to need to look at the enemy lineup and instantly know just how much heat you can take. An easy way to get started in this process is not even thinking about the enemy heroes at all, but instead thinking about the towers. Let's say you're a Bristleback and you have a Vanguard and you're level 5. How many tower hits can you take? Now, how many can you take if you're facing away from it? What about a mix of the two? These are important things that you need to know, because if you do know them, then you can dive the enemy position 1 and make him cry. This trait also functions as an easy excuse, because when you do foolishly dive tower and die in the process, feeding a very important kill to the carry and helping him get his battle fury just that much faster, you can always excuse it as limit testing. And finally, target priority, which is a very important thing for everyone in Dota, but especially so for offlaners. You're going to be first through the breach in the majority of teamfights, which means it's up to you to determine which heroes your team will kill first. Sometimes your job is easy, because the enemy team has heroes like Oracle, Witch Doctor, and Ancient Apparition. But other times they'll have a support duo of Ogre Magi and Hoodwink, and now you have to think about which core to go on first. It may sound strange, but sometimes you don't want to use your stun right away when you blink in if the enemy has important channeled spells that you will be responsible for cancelling. Target priority is a complicated beast, but you as the offlaner will have to make perfect sense of it before jumping in, which should be further motivation to develop that sense of patience that we talked about earlier, because no one likes a position 3 who blows their load all over the enemy position 3. Now if all of this sounds interesting to you, or you're still laughing at Chuck Norris jokes in 2026, here are a couple of position 3 heroes to help you get started learning the role. The first is an absolute classic in the form of Tidehunter, one of the tankiest heroes in the game and one of the hardest to fuck up on, but don't worry, there are ways. Kraken Shell is a supercharged vanguard, and Anchor Smash further lowers enemy attack damage, encouraging you to blink right on top of enemy cores and stay there for as long as you can. He also packs one of the biggest teamfight ultis in the entire game with Ravage, a massive AoE stun that you will, at least once in your life, hit on accident. He's a great example of a blink initiator who likes to buy a ton of defensive auras, making him one of the most stereotypical Pos 3s in the entire game. But let's say you're a little bit too smart for that and you want something that'll tickle your brain, in which case you can go for Lycan instead. Out of all the options for zoo heroes, he's probably the easiest to pick up and play because the wolves are fairly simple to use, and they don't have a ton of opportunity cost when you accidentally feed them under tower to a position 5. His ultimate, which makes him hasted and immune to slows, can help you get out of bad situations in a pinch, and if the enemy has ways of dealing with your wolves, you can always transition to a full-on right-clicker build. But if you want to load into the game with the express purpose of delivering fat bumbaclot smacks to the enemy core heroes, Legion Commander might be more your speed. She's one of the most direct assassin heroes in the entire game thanks to her ultimate, Duel, which locks you and your chosen opponent in a one-on-one right-clicks only match for a few seconds. You'll gain permanent bonus damage for every duel that you win, and her kit also includes a very strong unit target hard dispel and some utility against illusion heroes. But if you have some confidence in your micro skills and you want an offlaner with more than one build choice, Beastmaster might actually be the hero for you. You can either build around Helm of the Dominator and create one of the strongest zoo hordes in the entire game, or focus your build around Axes and Aghanim Scepter to become a pseudo-tank that can deliver a shocking amount of magic damage. His ultimate, Primal Roar, is a massive BKB piercing stun that will help you develop your target priority, because whenever you use it on the wrong hero, your entire team will let you know. One of the advantages of being a new offlane player is that there are a ton of different flavors of blink in and stun the enemy heroes, making it quite easy to develop a hero pool. And if you're ever really struggling on who to pick, you can just sort of wiggle your mouse over the strength section of the pick screen and choose whoever it lands on. There was a time when the offlane was referred to as the suicide lane, and there was very good reason for that. I wrote a little bit about it here, feel free to read it if you like. And finally, for aspiring Position 3 players, I have a few more tips and tricks to help you get acquainted with the role. The first is to learn as much as you can about Dota 2's wacky aggro mechanics. When the creeps first meet, you can start the lane off right by A-clicking the enemy carry and dragging his creeps towards your own ranged, which means that some of your melee creeps will hopefully go under his tower. You can repeat this trick throughout the lane in order to get at least a few last hits in a situation where you probably deserve 0. But creep aggro is only the start of the rabbit hole, because eventually you'll have to tackle the absolute black magic that is Dota 2's tower aggro system. I won't go too deep into it here, but there's actually a decent range where you can right-click the carry under their own tower and the building just won't give a shit about it, so try to learn that distance and master it. And for bonus points, try to learn how to make the tower aggro to your position 4 instead of you, not in order to extend a dive duration, but instead because it's funny. The second tip I have is to develop a sense of temperance when it comes to being annoying. This matters a lot whenever you're cutting creeps, but it also applies to the mid-game where you want to be taking dangerous farm that the rest of your team is just a little bit too scared to take. You want to present yourself as a potential kill, but one that would be just too much of a hassle in order to make the enemy team mobilize against you. Pushing past the remains of an enemy tier 1 is totally acceptable, but attempting to split push a tier 2 as a Tidehunter is not. Just put yourself in your opponent's shoes and think, gee, if I saw an Underlord farming the Croaker camp in my own jungle, would I buy a smoke and mobilize both supports in order to go kill him? If the answer is no, go ahead and put yourself in an extremely vulnerable position for very little gain. And if they do show up anyway, there's a reason why Valve put Space Created as one of the default chat wheel options. Lastly, when it comes to team fighting, it's extremely important to not only initiate the fight, but to also maintain their attention for at least the first few seconds of it. Heroes like Axe and Legion Commander can quite literally force this situation, but others, like Underlord, can oftentimes wind up being ignored for the duration of the team fight. Presenting yourself as a threat that cannot be ignored can sometimes be difficult, but the easiest way to do it is by trying to attack the guy who you are most scared of. If you can force the enemy windranger to use her ultimate on you, then you have accomplished your job, whether or not you survive. And finally, as the offlaner, you need to present yourself as the oldest player on your team, so if you can afford it, buy one of those voice changer programs or set up a voice input EQ and turn it down a couple of steps. Your goal is to sound somewhere around pirate software, but if you hit Corpse Husband, you've gone too far. In conclusion, offlane is a tenacious role, and you should absolutely play it. If I had my way, all professional offlaner players would be tested for human growth hormone and T injections before the start of every tournament. Peace on planet Earth.